and welcome to another episode of Masse Art Studios. I'm Lee Masse and I'm here on my own. I don't have Jeremy with me today. He had a very small outpatient back procedure. He is doing very well, but was a little sore and tender and didn't have the opportunity to paint with me today. So, because I'm going to be on my own, I took the opportunity then to do something a little different. In this episode, I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know in order to create a piece of art. The A's to Z's, literally, of everything that you're going to need in order to do a flip cup. That's going to go from what pea pads or table surfaces that I use, the different types of cups that you've got access to, what Floetrol is and how to mix that Floetrol into your acrylic paints in order to use it in a pour, different types of canvases that you've got access to, and then we're physically going to pour a canvas using the flip cup and the dirty layering technique, although I will show you how to layer a cup as well, and then we'll show you the finished piece and how I protect it in order for it to dry. So if you have never poured a piece of fluid art, if you don't have any equipment at home, if you do and don't know how to use it, then this is the episode for you. Old hands, you might want to skip this one because it's going to be very in-depth and it's going to be very in detail from A to Z. But everyone else, I hope you stick around because this is going to be a fun one for me, just going through everything we have on the table. So let's get to it. I will see you at the table for a lot of waffle. Well, ladles and jelly spoons. This is going to be a really fun one for me. So, as I just said in the intro, Jeremy had a very small procedure on his back. He's not feeling great, so I'm doing this episode solo. So I wanted to take an opportunity whilst I've got 30 minutes and you've got me on your own to dive in and delve into almost the A to Z's of what you might need to make a piece of fluid art. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you. We're going to talk about prep and canvases, then we're going to talk about paint mixing, then we're going to talk about one specific technique, we're going to pour that canvas, and then I'll even talk about what I do with it once the canvas is poured. So this is going to take a little while and it's going to be a lot of waffle. So if you're not here to listen to me and you're not here to learn about the A to Z's of pouring a piece of art and you just want the ASMR of pouring a canvas, this might not be the episode for you. But if you're a little stuck or you've never done this before, you want a little bit of a refresher, then welcome along and I hope you enjoy this ride. Okay, so first off we're going to talk about what it takes for us here in the studio in order to pour a piece of art, some of the materials that we use. I might miss some of them out and we'll talk about them as I go through this pour if I do. But here's some of the basics. First off, we've got a pea pad on our table. Now these pea pads are actually pads that you can use if you have a dog, and it's the things that you put on the floor to kind of potty train them or for accidents and stuff. Why do we use these? Well, because they're super absorbent. So if you do spill anything and we're tilting a lot of paint off these canvases, then these pea pads are really, really handy to be able to just kind of collect up, put them in the trash. Now that's what we started with, and we still use these every now and again, but what we also do is use plastic on the table, which is the stuff that's underneath this pea pad. These are Fluid Art Co silicone mats, and this is just plastic that you can buy from Home Depot. Why would we use plastic rather than the pea pad? Well, you can then scrape up the paint that is on your plastic mat or your silicone mat on your plastic tablecloth and use it again, whereas you can't really do that if you're using one of these pea pads. So do what's best for you. People like to kind of collect those scrapings and use them in other pours because it's good for the environment rather than throwing it away in the trash. Do what's right for you. Today we're using a pea pad. So we're protecting our table. And then I've also got on my table here an array of canvases, which we'll talk about shortly. I've got an array of plastic cups, which we'll go through. I have some acrylic paint because that's what we use in all of our pours. I have some of our flow extender or our paint conditioner, which is Floetrol. This is paint conditioner, what people often refer to as a pouring medium, although it is a paint conditioner. And then I have some spatulas and tongue depressors here. And then I have some rubber gloves. So this is all I really need, I believe, in case I've missed anything, to be able to pour myself a piece of art. Now I've already got some pre-mixed colours, but I do want to mix a colour with you so that you can see me do that too. And I'm going to try and do this without any editing. This is going to be completely uncut and again from A to Z. So let's start off talking about canvases. When you go to Michael's or Jerry's or Blake or Hobby Lobby or any of the stores, you're going to see a lot of different styles of canvas. Some are cheaper than others. This is what is called a back stapled canvas, because as you can see, the canvas is just stretched over this wood board and then it's stapled onto the back. These are typically cheaper than your gallery wrapped canvas. And this is called gallery wrapped because the actual canvas is neatly and tidily wrapped underneath this second kind of wood frame here. So there are actually two frames on this canvas. These are generally a little bit more expensive. Now when we're selling art, we tend to always use gallery wrapped. Now once you've chosen either back stapled or gallery wrapped, then you can think about, well, the thickness of your canvas. Clearly this one is thicker than this one. I think this one is 3/4 of an inch and this is 1 1/4 inches. It's up to you, your preference on the type of composition and canvas that you want. This canvas, you'll get to see more of the pour on the sides than you would on this one. This one is easier to frame because the frames are generally easier to find than this one. So it's really up to you to choose whatever canvas you see fit. But I urge you guys, if you are going to sell your canvases, you might want to think about gallery wrapped. It's just a little neater on the back. And clearly they come in all sorts of different sizes. Here we've got an 11 by 14 and a 12 by 16, but these canvases you can buy from the store all the way up to, I think, 48 by 70. Okay, so that's the difference in the different types of canvases. Let's talk about how we prep this canvas. So, as you can see, I've got some blue painter's tape on all the sides of the canvas, and then there are what is rather large push pins in here too. Why do we do that? Well, when I'm tilting this canvas, I'm going to grab the back of it to tilt the canvas out. And if I'm going to sell this canvas, I don't want there to be a ton of paint on the backside here. I want it to be kind of really neat and tidy. So that's the reason why we cover the back with this painter's tape. I just peel that off once the actual painting is dry. And then these push pins help raise the actual canvas off the table, because as the painting dries, I want the paint to drip off and land on my pea pad. If these push pins weren't on the canvas, then it would probably stick to the pea pad, or at the very least it would rip up the composition off the sides of the canvas because it would be touching the table. So you always want to raise your canvas somehow. Now you don't need to use push pins, you can use all manner of things. There are people out there that sell little triangles that can raise your canvas, or other implements to raise your canvas off the table. You can simply just use a plastic cup and put 4 of those on your table as well. However you see fit, whatever your budget will allow. So I've got my canvas here now backed and pinned. The other thing I'm going to do is take a spray bottle and spray the back of it with water. I'm doing this because a lot of the times your canvases will be a little loose on this wooden frame. And what the water does, it actually encourages the fibers of the canvas to retighten, so it is now super tight. And as we're going to pour something onto this canvas, what I don't want is all my composition to pool in the middle if this canvas was sagging. I want it to be all over the canvas. And so having a really tight substrate is super important. Okay, so now we've got a protected table, we've got a perfectly backed and tightened canvas. Let's talk about the paint. So acrylic paint comes in, again, what can be, I guess, a little confusing, different thicknesses, different levels, different viscosities. You've got all sorts of different types of paint that can be used in fluid art in different ways. So I've got just a small few here on the table. What I've got is heavy body paint. This paint is super, super thick, and you would use an awful lot less of this paint than some of the others. This paint here is what we'd consider a level 2 paint. This would be a level 3. A level 2 paint, this is just a traditional tube paint. This comes in all sorts of different sizes, like this. This is what is this? This is a 500 milliliter tub. It also comes in these smaller tubes, and you can even get it in kind of 4-ounce tubes as well. And then this is a fluid paint. So this is super, super thin. You would use this for different types of techniques, which I won't go into here, but you'll use the right paint for your technique. You can also use pigments. This is TLP, which you can get at fluid-art.co. Pigments can also be used in all types of fluid art. You can also use house paint. House paint is used in fluid art, such as blooms and other techniques as well. But I'm going to concentrate on acrylic paint, and I'm going to talk to you and show you how to mix up some Amsterdam paint here. Now this is pearl white. It's one of the only colours I don't have already pre-mixed, so we're going to mix that one together. Now I've been mixing paint for 4 years, and so what that means is I can kind of pretty much eyeball how much paint I'm going to need to the amount of paint conditioner I'm going to use, or Floetrol in this case. But we'll talk you through and I'll give you some ratios to help you along the way. So in order to be able to get this acrylic paint into a fluid consistency, we need to mix it, as I've said, with a pouring medium. And to do that, I'm going to put it into a plastic or paper cup. Now I've just got a small array of cups here. They're all falling off my table. But again, you can use whatever feels right to you. I know that some people out there exclusively use paper cups, and that is fine. We tend to use a lot of plastic cups in the studio. It's just a personal preference. You can get all sorts of different sizes, from 2 ounces to 16 ounces to 20-ounce cups. You can get cups that have measurements along the side of them as well. But you'll do what's right for you depending on your budget. There's a lot of conversation out there about the environmentally friendliness of paper versus plastic, and people think that paper is actually more environmentally friendly than plastic. The research that I've done is that it's actually not. In order for this paper cup to not just absorb all of the liquid and it just seep out, means that this is coated in some really, really nasty stuff. And it's not particularly more environmentally friendly than the paper cup, even though this one does not degrade in any way. If you want to be super environmentally friendly, then you'll use compostable cups, ones that actually will break down. But I'm going to use a paper cup for the purpose of this mixing. So I'm going to take my acrylic paint and I am going to pour the amount that I know I need into this plastic pot. Now when I first started doing fluid art, I would measure everything. And so I'm going to show you just how I did it. I'm going to put my paper cup on top of my scale and tear it down so that this is now a 0, okay? And I'm then going to put my acrylic paint into my cup. Now I know that this is a 12-ounce cup, and I'm going to put 4.5 ounces of paint into this cup. And then I'm going to take my paint conditioner and I'm going to fill this up to the 9 or 10 ounce mark. And that will give me a pouring consistency that I need specifically for the technique that I'm going to do today. Now, that's 9 ounces. I'm now going to mix this up. What you will have noticed as I poured out my paint conditioner or Floetrol into my acrylic paint here is this wonderful little thing on top. Now this is a pair of pantyhose that have been cut up into a little square, and then with an elastic band just put that over the top of your Floetrol, and you can put the cap right back on there. The reason why you want this on here is that there are some huge goobers in here. No matter how much you mix this thing, big long stringy bits of stuff that are in your Floetrol that you don't want to end up in your cup. So if you just use that little pantyhose tip, then you'll be able to strain as you pour. Now there are also people out there that make little tools that you can kind of screw onto the top of your Floetrol as well, little Floetrol strainers. They are absolutely perfect to use, but the pair of pantyhose for us last us in the studio for months, if not years. So that's just how we prefer to do it. So I've now got my acrylic paint in here. There was 4.5 ounces of acrylic paint, and I put into a total of 9.5 fluid ounces. So that was then 5 fluid ounces of Floetrol, and I'm mixing this up with this is a popsicle stick or a tongue depressor, which I always get off Amazon. But you could use one of these two implements, both from fluidartco.com. This is a piggy paddle, and this is just a silicone spatula. Now I do use these also because rather than potentially either throwing away or disposing of this tongue depressor because it's wooden, you could reuse these things and use them over and over again just by wiping them clean with some kitchen roll. For today, I'm using my little tongue depressor, and I'm going to mix this acrylic paint into my Floetrol and just get this to a really smooth consistency. Now, what I would say to you about consistency is this, that it's key for your technique that your consistency be the same across all the colours that you use in your piece, in your composition. However many colours you've got, whatever the technique is, the consistency for those tends to be the same across all the colours. However, there are different consistencies that you will need for different techniques. So for swipes and for blowouts, the consistency is thinner. And then for ring pours and for kissing cups and for straight pours and galaxy pours, the consistency tends to be thicker. We like to go on a thicker side of the thick. And so as you can see here, as I'm pouring this back into my pot, this mounds and then disappears, but is still leaving a really healthy trace in my cup. This might be a little thick. I might add a little water to this just to thin it down a little bit to get it to the same consistency as my other paints, and that is totally okay to do. If you want to thin out your paint and pouring medium, you'll add usually water. If you want to thicken it, then you can either add more paint or you can add something like a gel gloss into your consistency as well. So this is perfect. This is exactly what I need. Mixing this up, making sure that everything is mixed, that the bottom is scraped. What I don't want is big lumps of acrylic paint in my composition as I pour it out. But this looks to be fairly perfect. So just to recap, we've covered our table, we've backed and pinned our canvas and we've tightened it. Now we've mixed up our acrylic paints. All of these here are what I'm going to be using today. With the popsicle sticks in, and now these are all the same consistency, and I mix them just with paint and Floetrol, which you can get either at Amazon or from Home Depot. We get ours usually from Home Depot. I've mixed it into my plastic pots. You can see the different sizes here on the table, and you might look at the amounts of paint I've got in here and think, gosh, that's a lot of paint, because this is probably 16 ounces of this colour, and there's 12 ounces of this colour, and 5 ounces of this colour. But let me tell you, once we've poured our pieces, and Jeremy and I will always pour at least one each at the same time, we then cover them with press and seal. So this is press and seal, this is on top of this cup. These cups have been sitting in our garage here within our studio for weeks and weeks and weeks. So you can save your paint when it's been mixed up if you have the ability to store it, and please do, because then you can just use this paint over and over again. And that's what we do a lot of. So we'll tend to mix a larger amount because we'll then use those colours multiple times and we don't have to keep mixing them every time that we pour. Now, all of these colours here are a mix of the ones that I showed you. There's some Golden's Heavy Body in here, and there's some Amsterdam paints, and probably even some Liquitex Basics and some Arteza paints here as well. But what they are all is mixed to the same consistency. So every single one of those is the same consistency in order to make this pour, flow and work. All right, so a little less waffle, let's get to actually layering our cup. Now, there are multiple ways in this technique, which I didn't tell you, is going to be a flip cup. There are multiple ways that I could get my paint into the cup and then onto the canvas. There is the dirty layer, or there I can just layer the cup and pouring the colours nicely on top of each other. I'm actually going to show you both so that you can see the differences. And then what we're going to do is we're then going to flip these directly onto our canvas. There are many different types of techniques. Some of them I've already mentioned. You can Google and see all your favourite artists doing all sorts of different techniques. And each technique will require different consistencies and different layering of the cups. But what I suggest that you do is start easy. Do something that is simple. Find your feet, get comfortable with the ingredients and the equipment that you're going to be using, and then try all the 35 different techniques that there are out there, or possibly even more. So I'm going to show you one of the ones that we started with, which is kind of commonly known as one of the easiest, and that's the flip cups, where we're going to layer the cups and then get them onto the canvas. Okay, so like I said, we're going to layer these two different cups differently so that I can show you the difference between the two. And in this cup we're going to layer them, and in this cup we're going to dirty pour them. So let's start with the dirty pour first. It's called a dirty pour because what we're going to do is pour the paints into the cup from a height on top of each other. And those colours will then mix into each other as we do so. So I'm not layering these colours on top of each other, far from it. I'm actually getting all these paints to mix into each other in the cup, like so. And I've got an array of colours here that have all been used before, all sitting in our studio. There's 7 of these in total. I could go into colour theory and how and why I chose these colours, but that would make this episode about 3 hours long. So we're not going to talk about that in today's episode, but again, we have colour theory episodes on our channel. Please go check them out. And all of your favourite artists will also have those colour theory episodes as well. Did I talk about my rubber gloves? Look, I got paint on my hands. Jeremy hates getting paint on his gloves, but one of the easiest ways to protect your fingers from paint is just by putting some rubber gloves on. These are just nitrile kind of gloves that we use. We use them every single day in the studio. When there was a shortage of gloves, we didn't use them. A shortage of gloves, we didn't use them. We just got our hands dirty with paint instead. But now that these are easy to get again, we always use gloves in the studio to protect our hands. Okay, so that is a dirty poured cup of acrylic paint that's been mixed with our paint conditioner, and that one is ready to flip onto this canvas. But let me show you what a layered cup is. And what I'm going to do is, hold this as high as I can for you, I'm going to pour the exact same colours down one side of this cup, and what you'll see as I do that is that the paints will layer on top of each other, and you'll be able to see these layers distinctly down the side of the cup. Now, it's the same colours that I'm using, but the difference in the two techniques will absolutely have a difference in the composition if I were to pour them side by side onto 2 canvases for you. And again, we have done that. There are episodes that we have on the channel where we actually will, Jeremy and I have poured 2 canvases. One of those that was dirty layered and one that was layered in this fashion, side by side right next to each other. So please go check out those episodes as well. But as you can see here, these colours are staying beautiful in this cup. And this cup is now perfectly layered. And if I can hold this and show you, you can see all those colours right there down the side. And that is how I would then flip this one onto my canvas if I were going to do a layered cup rather than a dirty cup. Now, for the sake of this episode, I really love a dirty layer when I flip a cup, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now let's talk about my raw canvas. I've this beautiful white canvas here that's ready to get paint on it. Do I need to do anything to it first before I put my paint on it? You can. You can cover this canvas in paint, and that's called a base coat because you're putting a coat on the base of the canvas first before you're doing anything to it. Or you could decide to leave it and then put the cup onto the canvas and do what's called a flow extender, and that's exactly what we're going to do with this flip cup. So I'm going to show you that process right now. So I'm going to take this cup of layered paint and I'm going to flip this one directly onto my canvas. Now, a flip cup has literally a bit of technique of elbow into your belly and you're just flipping with your wrist. That's the easiest way to get all the paint from this cup onto the canvas, like this. 1, 2, 3. Now, it is okay that some of it came out because it's all going to come out eventually, but I'm okay the fact that some of this paint has come out. I filled it fairly high, so it was impossible not to. But what I'm doing now is I'm going to let all the paint go from the bottom of this cup to the top of the cup, which was the top and now it's the bottom. So I'm just going to wait a second for all that paint to come down the cup. All right, if you're still with me, thank you for being here. Like I said, there was an awful lot of waffle that's going through this episode and not a lot of editing either. So you're going to hear me talk all the way through this, and I'll talk you through the tilt as well, just so you understand what I'm doing. So I've left this now long enough for all these paints to get down to the bottom of the cup. I'm now going to lift this cup up and I'm going to, what is referred to, lip it. And that means I'm going to use the lip of the cup in the actual paint and create some kind of design and composition. And what this will do is help me get some beautiful lines through this pour as well. So let me show you. First thing I'm going to do is flip the cup, and then I'm going to take the lip of the cup and actually drag it through my composition. And what you'll see it does is it actually brings up some of the wonderful colours that sit underneath it. I love lipping a flip cup. Okay, one of the things that we didn't talk about you might need in your studio next is this. It's a torch, a creme brulee torch. Now, you can use a creme brulee torch, you can use a heat gun, there are other things that you can use, but what you have to do is you do have to pop the bubbles that you will see within your piece. And I'm hoping that you can see me pop these bubbles right here. They're creating little cells as you do so, but what this is doing is it's actually popping the bubbles so that they're not in the actual composition as I tilt it, or even more importantly as it sits and dries, because as those bubbles come to the surface they'll create little pock marks in your painting. All right, so we talked about the flow extender because we did not put a base coat down on this canvas. So what I'm going to do is use some of my leftover paint in this instance. I actually no, in fact I'm not. I'm going to do exactly what we normally do. And I'm going to use my flow extender. I told you guys that when we use the plastic tablecloths, we scrape up all of those excess paint and we use them in the future. Well, this is exactly that. This is all the excess paint used from a previous pour that we then scraped up and put into this plastic cup. And I'm going to use this as a flow extender. Now it's called a flow extender because it's basically there to do exactly that, to extend the flow of your composition. If I were to just tilt that out without this flow extender on it, what would happen is all these colours would roll over each other rather than sliding across the canvas. So I'd lose some of that really awesome stuff that you can see here on this canvas. So this is an important part of the process in order to keep all the wonderful stuff that you've just flipped right on top of your canvas. Now, the base coat and or your flow extender does not necessarily need to be a colour that is complementary to the piece that you're creating if your intention is not to leave negative space, because the likelihood is I am going to cover this canvas with everything that I've just flipped onto it, and you're not going to see any of this metallic kind of grey green at all. It really is just there to help me extend the flow of that composition. So it doesn't matter to me what colour it is. If you intended to use negative space, then you would want to use a colour that is complementary to your canvas because you're going to see it. So it's way more important. Okay? All right, so now we've got our flow extender around our canvas. I'm going to pop any of the bubbles again because a couple have arisen as we've been, or as I've been chatting, because you guys have not said a word. Okay, next things up, we're going to get this canvas tilted. It's tilting time, as we say here in the studio. Now, I am now going to tilt this composition all across my canvas to hopefully get something wonderful and fun. What am I thinking about as I do this? Okay, well, what I'm thinking about is this. When I tilt the colours of this composition over an edge, it will anchor that colour in that spot unless I tilt it back off again. This here that's kind of already rolled over the edges, this orange is going to stay exactly where it was when I tilt this out because it's anchored over the edge of the canvas. Until you anchor it, you got a lot more freedom. So I tend to, on a larger canvas, not anchor my paints until I'm really confident with what it is that I'm seeing on my canvas. But this is a 12 by 16 inch canvas, so I'm going to just tilt this one out with you and we're going to have a look and see what happens. So I picked up the canvas now, and now I have the canvas in my hands. This is the fun part. What I'm now looking for is the weight of the paint, where all the paint is that's been flipped out onto my canvas. The weight of the paint is basically where it moves the quickest. So I can see right now that the weight of my paint is right here as I tilt it down. And as I tilt it back, the weight of the paint moves. So the weight of the paint is now right here. And I'm using that in order to help me then tilt my colours off the rest of this canvas. So let's do that. I'm going to anchor this part of the composition over this corner. So I'm going to get the weight of the paint back, and now I'm going to tilt it down to this corner right here, which I think will be your top right hand corner, or maybe your top left. So I'm just tilting fairly gently. Look at all that paint that's running off onto my pea pad, which is exactly why I put it down on the table. Okay, so now my colour has been anchored over my edge. I'm now going to get my paint and the weight of my paint back to centre. Okay, so my paint is now right here. Now I'm going to have a look and see, well, what do I want to do next? I've got 3 exposed corners that I can go to. I'm thinking I'm going to go to the opposite corner and stretch all these colours out. So I'm just going to keep tilting. I'm going to keep the weight of the paint now moving to this corner of the canvas. Now I do really love that kind of bright, I think that one is the violet cobalt hue. It could be Bordeaux red, but I really don't want to lose a lot of that red if I can help it. So I'm going to go a little gently. I'm going to be able to definitely keep some of it for sure. Okay, I did. I kept some of that beautiful red there. I like that pop of red. So now I'm going to bring the weight of the paint back to the center. All right, now we've got 2 more choices. We can either go here or here. Because everything has been over on this side, I'm actually going to take it back now down to this corner. So the weight of my paint was now back in the middle. But I'm going to move everything down. Hopefully you can see all this beautiful paint. All this starting to move. And you can see this edge of my composition here, it's not rolling over each other. It's actually sliding down the canvas, and that is because of my wonderful flow extender, which was just paints I scraped off my table. They weren't paints from pots, they were just literally paints that I didn't use, just like all that paint that's sitting on that pea pad right now. Okay, now let's get the weight of our paint back to center. As we do that, I'm kind of looking to see what's going on. Okay, but I'm going to keep hold of this canvas because now we're going to cover that far corner. I am loving the lines in this where we lipped into the flipped cup. I'm loving the different colours, the orange into the blue and the blue into the orange that you can see. I'll show you in a second, those little cells that have popped up as we've been tilting this composition out. I'm loving the electric blue that's coming up in parts. The pearl white that's now just starting to pop up into that beautiful dark cobalt violet as well. Okay, now let's bring this back to center. Now at this point, with all my sides covered, I'm now thinking how I want to leave this composition on this canvas. I'd like to stretch out that, what I think is your bottom left hand corner or your bottom right, and I stretch that one out a little. So I'm going to keep pulling this one back to the center. It's very geodey, it's very kind of natural rock formation looking. Clearly the colours are not of nature, but I really love the lines that you get in this pour. Okay, I am extremely happy with how that's turned out. I'm just going to wipe my hands off here onto my pea pad. We also have a big roll of kitchen roll over there as well, which we use an awful lot of. Paper towel, sorry I should say, kitchen roll in England, paper towel here in the States. Next thing, I'm going to take my tongue depressor and I'm going to scrape the edges of my canvas, which I can do because my canvas has been raised off the table with those push pins. Why am I doing this? Well, if I didn't do this and I didn't scrape my edges, those edges would continue to pull off the canvas and they would pull all the paint off the top and they would move the composition. It would also stretch the colours down the sides. So I'm just scraping my edges just to make sure that it is as clean as it can be. As it sits, it's absolutely gonna drip a little bit, but I don't want it to drip so much that it pulls all the paint off the actual canvas. So there we are. My canvas has now been scraped, and I'm going to take my torch one last time and I'm going to pop any of those final bubbles, just to make sure that as this one sits and dries, that nothing comes to the surface and causes any pot marks within the composition. Now, one of the things I just realized I didn't talk to you guys about was actually how much paint I needed in order to create this piece, because you saw me layer this cup, but how did I know that that cup was going to be enough for this canvas? Well, there is an equation that will help you, and that is this. If you take your length of your canvas and multiply it by the width of your canvas and divide that by 28, that will give you an approximate amount of ounces that you need in order to create a piece, no matter what size it is. So 11 by 14 divided by 28, or 30 by 30 divided by 28, whatever it is, it will give you a really good idea of how much paint you'll need. Now, that is just a guide, but it's there for you to be able to kind of understand how much paint you might need for your canvas. So we have now scraped our edges, we have torched it off again. It's now got to sit and dry. How do we dry our canvases? Well, let me show you. We use these wonderful little things, which are called picnic savers. And it's a net. It's a net that you'll use that you can put over the food that you have outside when you have picnics. And this thing is huge. I think this one is like 30 by 15 in total. But look how big this is. This is a massive big net. And we basically then just put this on top of the table, like so. And what this does is it protects it from heebie-jeebies, from mosquitoes, from anything that might decide to come and fly into your canvas. Now, it's not 100% foolproof. Even with these things on before, we've had things fly into our canvases, but it will absolutely help you if you are painting in a place like our garage, for example, where there are lots of heebie-jeebies that are flying about, flies and spiders and all sorts of stuff. I think Nate even had a gecko in one of his pieces before. They are particularly good if you do a lot of resin work. If you resin, you can then put one of those little picnic savers over your actual piece, and then you can protect it as much as you can so there's not dust particles and hair particles and all those kind of things flying into your composition. So that's it, folks. That is the equipment that you could need in order to create a piece of art. That is all the way from protecting your table, how you mix your paints, how you store your paints, the implements that you can use to actually pour your paint onto your canvas, the different types of canvases, a little snippet into the different lakes, as well as just one technique in particular here, which is the flip cup, one of many. But I hope that gives you enough confidence and information to be able to go to your local Jerry's, Hobby Lobby, Blick, Michael's, whatever, pick up a few things and just have a go. If you've been sitting at home thinking, oh my God, I love that, or oh my God, I know I could do that even better with different colors, we're going to challenge you to do it, but you just have to go and have a go at it. These things that we are using are not terribly expensive, like our plastic comes from Amazon, you can buy hundreds of them at a time. The popsicle sticks, you know, you get thousands of them. So things are not expensive. Do not spend a ton of money until you know that you're really kind of, you know, into it and you've got the bug. But yeah, have a go, because it is a heck of a lot of fun. And if we hadn't had a go 4 years ago, we wouldn't be here teaching you guys right now. So I hope you enjoyed that. It was a lot of chit chat, but I really hope that if there's anyone out there that wanted to do some fluid art and hasn't had the courage to do so, that it gives you just that. So next I'm going to take you in for a close-up of this piece so that you can see it. And we'll be back in the little outro and I'll chat to you a little more. Thanks, guys. So there you have it, folks. There you have it. What did you think? I hope that that was informative. I hope that no one out there says, oh my God, you talk too much, because that was the whole point of this episode. And if that is the case, you just didn't get it. But I really hope that if there's anyone out there, like I said, that just hasn't tried this technique yet because they think it's too complicated or they don't know how to even start, I hope that this really helps, because I tell you what, we just threw ourselves into this almost 4 years ago, and it's been an absolute joy of a journey ever since. So that was a flip cup using a dirty layer. I really love how this one came out. The colours will not be everyone's choice because it's very juxtaposition-y. We've got blue, we've got orange, and there's a lot of like that really dark cobalt violet in there as well. But I love how the blue came up in the orange and the orange came up in the blue. I love the lines of that lip. So cool, and it was extremely easy to do. So if there's anyone out there that wants to give it a go, I hope this one is the one that will just tip you over the edge to do it. Jeremy will be back with me. He is fine. He's doing really, really well, but he will be back with me, I hope, next week. He's having another procedure actually on Monday, so we'll see. If not, I'll be here again, and we'll be pouring some more fun stuff. If you've noticed, we've recently hit about 37,500 subscribers. It took us years to get to 20,000, and then it's suddenly taken us like 3 months to get almost to 40. Thank you so much if you're new and you're here with us. We really appreciate you being here. We'd love to get to that 40,000 mark, and we will be celebrating it. I'm very confident with something fun. Thank you to everyone that's bought the Artfluence book from Amazon. It is still available to purchase. It will be forever. And anyone out there that just needs some hints and tips on how to use social media, specifically YouTube, in order to help sell their art, go check that book out. It is available paperback and hardback on Amazon with the links in the description box as well. And we've also got a new link there to Arteza Deco Art products, I'm sorry, so that you'll be able to go and enjoy some discounts off the Deco Art products within the description box as well. Guys, that's it. I need a drink. You guys have probably heard enough of me waffle. Go and enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you back here again next Wednesday. Goodbye, guys.